What's up, YouTube? It's me again. Today we are going to be doing spark plugs and spark plug wires on a 2002 Mercury Grand Marquis. Once again, this applies to all the other Panther body cars. So we're looking at the Lincoln TownCar and the Ford Crown Victoria. This will apply directly to 98 to 2002, but you can extrapolate most of this information and use it for later years. And I'm sure some of the information will apply to the earlier years as well. So the issue is I've had some stumbling, some hesitation while cruising, cutting, and it's not the transmission, it's a misfire. And I had a check engine light for code P0306. And in OBD2 language, that is a cylinder 6 misfire. In fact, it was bad enough to where the check engine light was flashing and I was losing power pretty badly. And from what I understand, that's bad. So yours could be P0301, 0302, all the way up to 0308, and that last number just tells you which cylinder is the bad cylinder, and you can use a diagram to figure out which one is the bad cylinder. Now, since I don't know how old the plugs and coils are in this car, I'm just going to do a whole set. I figured it's probably the best thing. We've got 106,000 miles, just got the car, and seeing how easy it's going to be and relatively inexpensive, might as well do the whole thing and just get that out of the way and see where the dust settles. Now, I'll show you here in a minute the plugs and the coils that I use. This is a coil on plug car, so every single cylinder has its own coil. And a common issue with these cars is the intake manifold just over time gets old, it cracks, and coolant and possibly oil and moisture will build up around the spark plug boots, and eventually it'll just damage the coils. And so today we're going to be fixing that. From the looks of it, my car isn't exactly plagued by that issue, so I'm not really too worried about the intake manifold, but we're going to go ahead and clean that area just so we have a nice clean work area with brand new parts, and we'll reset that check engine light and we'll see where we sit once everything's said and done. I believe that this will fix the problem, and if it doesn't, it's not like we're missing out on a whole lot, because I mean, this is something that probably should have been done a long time ago, and it's just a relatively inexpensive job to do. So just hold on a second. I'm going to show you what parts I got, and I'm going to walk you through the process of getting these plugs changed out on these 4.6 liter Panther body cars. So here's the coils we're going to be using. I ordered these on eBay, and the reason why I did that is normally I try to stay away from lower quality parts or potentially lower quality parts, but from the little bit of reading I've done, you know, for the price of one of these at the parts store, I was able to get all 8. So, I mean, if I'm going to be in there replacing the plugs, I might as well do these as well. And, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's going to be too hard. So if I have to do this again in, a year or 2 years, like, no big deal. I'll pay the 30 or 40 bucks to do this again. But yeah, these were some type of eBay special, and I got a whole case of 8 in this box here, and we're gonna see how these turn out. And just to be safe, the other 7 coils on the car that are presumably good, I'm gonna go ahead and hold on to those on the off chance that one of these fails and I need something to get me by. I can just throw a stock one back in there to hold me off while I order another set. So, but we're going to be putting these in the car today. Alright guys, and what we're using today is these Autolite Platinum plugs. I got 8 of them. I got these at Advanced Auto Parts. I don't really know what they cost. I think it was like $25 for the whole set. I had a gift card, that's why I wasn't really paying attention. So basically we got to put all 8 of these in, and the gap is supposed to be set between 0.052 and 0.056 inches, and so if you have your gapper, you'd want to use that before you drop these in, and we're going to do that and just double check and make sure these gaps are set properly before we drop them in. And then also over here we have the spark plug boot dielectric grease, if you want to call it that. We're going to dab this in each of the coils before we drop them on the plugs, and that's to help seal out moisture around the spark plug. Now, the jury is out on using the anti-seize compound, but I researched these issues pretty well before I take on these projects, and the consensus that seems to be more prevalent is that you don't use the anti-seize on these specific motors. You might do it on your Honda Civic or your Chevy 1500 or whatever, but don't do it on this car. We're not going to be doing that today. So just pull the old ones out, and then we're going to hand thread these in, and we're going to use a torque wrench and make sure they're snugged up correctly. And I will demonstrate that when we get to that step here in just a few minutes. Okay guys, so we're gonna get started on this job. It's a little dark in here, but I do have the lights on and the doors open. You'll notice my cover's off. That is what is remaining of it, and that's because it was cracked. I just ripped it off. But you have to remove this bolt here, and it looks like it's a 1/4 inch just a drive, so stick your ratchet in there and undo that bolt, and then when you pull that bolt out, your whole plastic cover will come off. I'm probably just going to remove that shard and throw it away, and then your first step for this job is going to be to come over here to this bolt on your intake pipe and loosen this hose clamp, and you'll have to do the same thing right here with a flathead screwdriver or what appears to be 10mm socket, but I'll tell you in a minute. And then we'll have to remove this section of pipe and just set that aside so we can get to the driver's side plugs, and I'll show that to you here in a minute. Alright guys, it's a 8mm, and you can use a socket, which I'm going to be doing here. Just a little bit of loosening is all we need here, and here. Now you can use hand tools, but I mean, I have power tools. I'll use them when I need to, so it will make things a little easier. So we got the intake off, and what we need to do is remove this bolt here on each of these coil packs. There's one there, and then the last one is right down there. And what I've got here is a 7mm socket and a swivel. I don't know if you need the swivel, but it looks like it's going to make this a lot easier. So just apply even torque to that bolt, and these should just break free, and loosen that out by hand. Set that bolt on your magnetic parts tray so you don't lose it, and then we'll pull these coils out. But the first thing we got to do before we even get through all that is we're going to blow some compressed air through all of these valleys. We don't want a whole bunch of dirt falling into these spark plug holes. Okay, so I just spent about 5 minutes blowing out all these channels with compressed air, and then I went another round with brake cleaner and sprayed it in there as best I could and blasted it out with compressed air. Don't use a power washer, that's gonna mess up everything. So just spritz some brake cleaner down in there, blast out those channels, and we're gonna go at it a second time once we pull all these coils out. So next step, bolts. Remove each of these bolts here, and a swivel and an extension definitely makes it easier. And once we got all of these bolts out, I'll show you what to do next. Okay guys, so I got all of the bolts out here. I mean, they're nothing special. Once again, 7mm wrench. I would not use anything but 1/4" drive equipment. 3/8 is just too big to fit in there. I mean, maybe you can. 1/4" is just what I would recommend. I got all the bolts out. Obviously, the hardest ones to get to were the last cylinder on each side. This one, it was not a issue of getting the wrench in there. It was that this is the only cylinder I had trouble with where the socket would bump into the fuel rail. But I cracked it loose. I turned it a couple times, and then I pulled the wrench out and then just used my fingers to loosen that out all the way. Just be patient, you'll get through it. But I wouldn't say it was hard. And then over on this side, you don't have to remove this box. And once again, take the bolt out, and this one you would want to drop the wrench in through this way. The bolt's gone now, but you can see the hole right there, and have the swivel pointing this way so your wrench will actually be right around the opening of the throttle body. And just bust that loose and then finger thread it out. So your next step, we got all the coils loose, is you need to go around and grab each one of these connectors, and there's a little squeeze clip, and you just pull that off like so, and just do that for every one of these, and then we'll pull these bad boys out. And I know you probably already noticed these things. This is why you don't have to take the fuel rail off, is because I mean, they're pretty wiggly. We're going to be able to pull them right around the fuel rail. So do not take the fuel rail off unless you have to, because you don't need to. So okay, so the clips are off. I already pulled the other side. Unfortunately, there is some fluid on these boots. One of the cylinders had a bit of oil on it, as you can see. Honestly, these haven't been removed in 100,000 miles, so if that's the amount of fluid we're dealing with, I can't really say I have any complaints. Maybe in the future I'll replace that intake manifold, but for now it runs pretty good. And the one I just removed is cylinder 6. That is the bad cylinder. So presumably that coil is shot. Once again, it has some oil down in the plug wells. Funny enough, I don't really see any like leakage around that hole, so I'm not entirely sure how it ended up like that. Just pull like that, and boom, there she comes. So really, it's not terrible. I mean, that's the damage right there. There's this one cylinder on the one side that had a boatload of this oil in there, but and if we peer down into the hole there, it doesn't look like there's really much of anything down there. It is dirty though, so we're gonna have to blow these out with compressed air. And I don't know if I want to put brake cleaner in there, but I don't see how it would hurt. This should be done on a cold engine. Do not run the car all day and then decide to do this. The heads are aluminum, the plugs are steel. Yeah, I'm gonna run the air compressor here and get these spark plug wells blown out. So give me just a second. Okay guys, just got done with a very lengthy process of spraying brake clean into these wells and blasting them out. Don't do that. It just makes a big mess. As you can see, this was relatively clean before, and now I've just made a huge mess of things. So when we pull that plug out, it's just gonna drip oil in the cylinder. Oh well, I guess. I mean, it's not the first time that's ever happened. So it'll just smoke for a few seconds when we start the engine. But I'm gonna try to get a rag in here and wipe some of that bullshit out. And then we're gonna go ahead and stick a wrench down in here and bust these loose. It takes a 5/8 spark plug socket, and you're gonna want to use your 3/8 drive wrench and bust all those loose, and then unscrew them by hand. Alright, so I pulled the first one out. It's covered in oil because obviously I was spraying brake cleaner everywhere and cleaning that head off. So some of that trickled in. You can see I got the plug out. I got the new one on the spark plug socket, and I'm using this giant extension to get that out. Remember, apply even torque to that head, and also only hand thread these in. Do not use a wrench, because that's how you strip threads. Make sure that you've rotated it in there at least a few rotations before you apply a wrench to that. Okay, so I got the second one in there, and we can see down in there, much cleaner. Hand thread, guys, I can't stress that enough. So I've done the first two. I gotta get this one here, and I'm gonna try to go ahead and catch that one on film for you guys, since I've been doing this off camera. Okay, this last one here in the back, you can actually get to with a straight extension. They're angled, and the head's really nice to where you don't really need a swivel to get these out. Yeah, I just dropped this one in. This one's like a 10 or 12 inch. I would highly recommend those, because sticking a bunch of threes together, they always have a tendency to fall off each other and then just get lost. So there she is. Alright, just finished the driver's side, and that last one really wasn't a pain. This one, look at this angle. This is how you're going to get to this. So go around these fuel lines. There we go. They've all been like this, just a little weird when they come out, but none of them are stripped. Alright, that last plug, this one right here, took me forever to get the other one to catch. It wasn't stripped out, it's just I've never dealt with a set of heads where the plugs took so long to line up, but I kept at it for like 20 minutes, ended up switching plugs. This one I feel like isn't even in all the way. I don't know if I'm turning that or what. It feels like I might be. Yeah, that last plug in there was, it was pretty loose. So I'm quite surprised how easily that came out. But I've been going through here and spraying compressed air down in the holes after I finish putting a new plug in, just to make sure there's no dust in there. So there's still some stuff down in there, but most of these are looking pretty good. So it'll definitely run better. Okay, so upon closer inspection, you can't get into this one with the straight extension. So I had to use a 3-inch on the socket and an elbow or U-joint, and then my 12-inch. So it looks like this. Get that out of there. Well, you can see it. It's right there. And that'll make this easy. But I guess my question is, how are we going to get the new plug in there lined up easily? So I'm going to go ahead and crank this one out with both hands. So I cracked it loose. And that plug, once you crack it loose and you loosen it, you have to remove your bank extension and reach back here with your fingers to pull the 3-inch and the joint out, and the plug will come out through this gap here. It will not come out this side, which is where you'll probably want to go first. So we're going to go ahead and get this hole cleaned up and drop that new one in. Okay, I got 2 torque wrenches. I'm going to do this right. I snugged all the plugs, and now I'm going to go back around to every hole, and I'm going to throw, I have a big foot-pound one and then a precision inch-pound one, and they're both set to 14 foot-pounds. Alright guys, we got all the plugs torqued 14 foot-pounds. I do the research on these things, guys, and I mean, I've seen values from 11 to 15, 16 foot-pounds, but generally I try to look at as many sources as possible, including a manual, and the number I came at was about 14, and they were all snug, and then I put the wrench on it and it gave it like 1/32 of a turn, if that, and it clicked, and they're all tight. So you go tighter than that, 20 or 25, you're gonna bust those threads. So just do your own research. I did 14. I'm sure you'll be fine with that. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna come over here, and we got our brand new coils, and we gotta drop one of these in every cylinder. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a little dab of this into that hole there, and that should help seal out moisture and hopefully some of that oil that's still in there, even though we cleaned out most of it. So alright, installation of these is pretty easy. Obviously they bend and you can fit them in there fairly easily, and you've done it right when the boot is snug against the head, as you can see I've done in each of these cases. None of these are hard to put in. And then all we gotta do is come over here, grab a bolt, put the bolt in there, and then hand thread that until it's pretty low in there, and then grab your 7mm and go ahead and snug that back up. Now this one I couldn't find a torque rating for. I would just tighten it until it's bottomed out and then just snug it a little more. So you don't need to kill these. But yeah. So I already did this side. I still gotta do the other side. But I'll show you the finished product here in a second. There we go. Just gotta put these bolts in here. And when I'm done with that, we're gonna hook all the connectors on here and just hook up the intake tube, and then I think we're done, guys. It's just a little time consuming. It's not incredibly difficult. Okay, so make sure these are pointed like back, because you'll notice these will still rotate even when they're bolted down. Just push your thumb against that and make sure they're pointed that way as much as possible, because there is like a stopper on them. And that's it, guys. Just snap these bad boys on here. And now I just put the intake pipe on. Alright. We're done. Reconnected this pipe. Clamp here, and then obviously make sure you pop in your hoses back here. Eating a bagel, sorry. Yeah, I mean, just take a cursory look around, make sure everything's back the way it was, and we're gonna go ahead and start this bad boy up and see what happens. Here goes. Just smoking out the ass end from that oil. I'm not feeling anything. Granted, I've only gone, half throttle here or there and part throttle the rest of the way, and maxed out about 55 so far, but I've checked I have an app called Torque Lite, and I have an OBD2 Bluetooth scanner, and no pending fault codes so far. When I idled it in the driveway for about 3 or 4 minutes, I checked for pending and stored codes, and there were none in both cases. And I just checked it now while cruising along. No pending fault codes. So I'm gonna go ahead and drive her for about 5-10 miles.